I can't make any sense how Drew Brees finished the first half on 5 broken ribs and a lung that was collapsed. Nick Underhill, who covers the New Orleans Saints as good as anybody, and he writes over at neworleans.football and is here every Tuesday. Compliments of Chris Perrette, former LSU Tiger and current attorney Chris Perrette. You can find his work at neworleans.football and check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. How are you, man? Good morning.
Hey, I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
Doing okay. Can you give an explanation of what you saw from Brees in the final 3 minutes of the half on Saturday?
I mean, that was crazy. He's out there doing that with the collapsed lung, broken ribs. I mean, you can't ever question that guy's toughness. And the craziest thing about that is he came out in the second half and he still intended to play. He thought his back had tightened up on him a little bit. And he tells Peyton that he can't go into the game. And that was just still in his mind a temporary situation. We've seen him keep going into the little blue injury tent they pop up on the side, and he's in there trying to get his back to loosen up, thinking it's a muscle, and it's a collapsed lung. So, I mean,
So
this guy's
do you expect him back?
determination to play is unmatched.
Yes.
This,
You expect him back this year?
I do. I think right now they're looking at it like it's going to be maybe like a 3-week injury. I mean, obviously we'll see how that responds. But starting out, the fact that they aren't looking at him as if he's done, I think has to be a sign of confidence in his ability to get back. And we saw last year. I mean, he's not a sane person when it comes to these things. He got back with that thumb injury earlier than anyone expected. Even beat the bye by a week when he could have sat out that game and got himself another week with it. So he's going to do everything he can to play. And, I do think that if it's physically possible for him to get out there by the end of the season, we'll see him again. It's not going to be a pain thing. I mean, he said that himself, and I think his actions speak for that too, just over the years, all the stuff he's been willing to play through. And look, he had 2 broken ribs after the Tampa game, they're saying, and just never got it checked. So, I mean, he's going to play if he can get his body moving and his lungs filling up.
Yeah, right. Like I think they X-rayed it, and then because his body's so torn apart, it was just too swollen for them to see those fractures until this most recent CAT scan. I mean, you're absolutely right, Nick. Like his ability to mentally overcome pain is such that he did not even feel those broken ribs. He's a legend, man. But if you're going to get by without the legend, it's going to be on that defense. A lot like it was last year when you went 5-0 when nobody would have thought you would do that tough schedule. You got an easier schedule in these next 4, but let's look at what the defense did on Sunday and what you can carry forward because to me, Dennis Allen clearly smelled some blood in the water with Mullins. He knew he wanted to get after and force him to make decisions and that would work out for them. What was your take on how the defense played Sunday?
Yeah, for me, I mean, you do have to take some points off it because of who San Francisco didn't have on the field. But for me, the biggest thing was just seeing how they executed. And this is a team, they used motion on like 39 plays in this game. And motion against the Saints earlier this season was their kryptonite. And they get them moving around and looking in the wrong places and get them displaced and disorganized. And I think you saw that a couple times on the very first drive. They got a guy off Lattimore. They got him caught on a pick and scored a touchdown. But I think outside of that, like they were very good with staying disciplined, watching what they needed to watch, making the proper switches. There was a 3rd and 1 play where Malcolm Jenkins cut off, the pass to the flat on a bootleg, and that, caused them to punt. So it was a lot of little things that they were doing, and it wouldn't have mattered who they were playing with the way San Francisco approached it. If they weren't on point, you would have seen the defense shatter. And they stayed together really well. And now we've seen, I think since the Chargers game, there's been incremental progress of them rounding into shape. And despite Jimmy Garoppolo not being out there, despite George Kittle not being out there, I think we saw those same things where the Saints didn't beat themselves, and that's what matters. So if you're going to lose Brees, at least there's some signs for hope on the other side of the ball. They got to keep it going. It's a small sample, but it does seem like things are trending in the right direction.
Before we jump back to offense, Jameis Winston, how about the Manitoba Mauler right now, Nick? I mean, dude. Where does David Onyemata, where does he kind of figure in the larger interior defensive line NFL conversation right now?
It's, he's in there, and it's crazy. I think he was always a very solid player for them, and I thought when they kept him, they were keeping a good role player. I thought the contract was a little high. I'm not going to lie. When they signed him, I was like, wow, they really got to pay him that. I think we're seeing it now. And Sheldon Rankins going out in a weird way. His allowed him to elevate his game even more. And I think he's showing more what he can do because now he's in there in those third down situations and he can kind of just, get after it. And I think earlier in his career, those situations were a little bit more limited for him. And maybe we just didn't see everything he could do as a pass rusher. But, also the Manitoba Mauler was up in Manitoba not too long ago, playing a different brand of football in Canada, and he's rounded into shape. So it's crazy. I think he's probably one of the 3 or 4 guys, from start to finish on this team that has been a given every single week, and everybody else's play has fluctuated, and he's kind of been an anchor point for them on the defensive line, and he's an extremely important player for them. And I'm not sure we would have guessed that coming into the year, but he's definitely coming to his own now.
Can you speaking more of the defense, can you speak to what Chauncey Gardner Johnson brings as far as a mentality to this team? I was telling T-Bob earlier, and we were speaking on air. To me, he's the closest comparison to Tyrann Mathieu that I have seen as far as having an impact on the game from the defensive side, because he can cover, he can blitz, he can help you in the run game, and he's just so physical and moves so quick from sideline to sideline. He's all over the place. Can you talk about what he brings to the team as far as confidence and a mentality?
I think that's a pretty good comparison, and I do think that he's the one guy that I think is just a little bit mean on Sundays. And Anyamata gives you a little bit of that in his style of play, but Gardner Johnson gives you that in his attitude. And I'm not sure they have a lot of guys like that, but you see how people rally around him, how they feed off him. And it's not just one side of the ball. The guys on offense see the way he plays and gets fired up. You saw Alvin Kamara run out there after he got hurt in this last game and kind of rallied around him. And, I think it's a matter of keeping all that in control. There's moments where he's not in control of himself. And I think, someone like Tyrann has learned how to do that, and that kind of makes it a little bit different. But, if Chauncey can eliminate this stuff where there's the late hits or, antagonizing teammates during practice, that attitude is a huge benefit. And I think 9 times out of 10, it is something positive. It's that 10th time. And I think as he gets older, he'll learn how to harness that and stay in more control of himself. But yeah, his play too. And I think this was probably the best game he's played. I think when they keep him in more of a downhill, it's everything in front of him type of role, but he really, really shines. His stuff as a blitzer in the run game this time. Going back to my first point about fundamentals and keeping their eyes in the right place, he was someone who did that really well in this game. And I think earlier in this year, he was almost someone that teams knew they could displace through motion and shifts and different things. And the Raiders did it on a touchdown against him. The Packers got him in it a few times. And I think since those games, he's tightened up. And I think that's true for everyone on the defense, not just to single him out. But, his play is elevating as the year goes on. And I think, like coming out of this game, he was probably the guy that I would highlight is just really that standout performance on defense.
Talking to Nick Underhill at Nick_Underhill on Twitter. Sign up for NewOrleans.football. Big trust. It is my favorite Saints site. Nick, I'm not taking any sweeping judgments away from Jameis Winston in this first game for the same reasons that I did it with Teddy Bridgewater last year when he was thrust midstream. How do you feel about Winston, Hill, and Peyton moving forward without Brees over how do you feel about them moving forward to this next portion of the schedule?
I wonder if I'm a little too confident or not worried enough, just given because of how well last year went. They went 5-0, and now Brees goes down, and you kind of feel like, oh, well, they'll figure it out because they figured it out before. And I do believe that they're going to figure it out. I just don't know if the level of concern is reached where it should actually reach. I think Teddy was maybe a little bit better equipped to come in right away and just game manage and, rely on the defense, get the ball to Mike, just everything will work itself out. And, Winston's a little bit of a different player. And I think that's exciting in some ways because, I do believe that there's an element of explosiveness that he can bring to this offense. And I think his ceiling is much higher than Teddy's. And there's a real chance if he goes out here and he shows, hey, I'm not going to throw these interceptions. I'm going to eliminate these mistakes. My vision's better. All this stuff has come together for me that, you're going to see possibly a player that is going to be coveted. I don't think his talent has ever been an issue. It's just the mental processing. But on the other side of that, if he goes out there and he's not seeing the field well, and he's making these mistakes, and he almost made one in this last game trying to throw a pass to Mike Thomas over the middle, didn't see the guy lurking underneath in coverage. There's a chance that they could lose a game or two because of him, throwing an interception or making a mistake. So it's going to be interesting to see. We don't really know what he can do. One of the things when they signed him for that $1 million contract and they shut down the NFL during, the offseason, canceled the preseason, it kind of created a weird little situation where the Saints were going to be able to help Jameis grow. And at the end of the season, they would be the only team to know where he was at. And if you don't see him, how does Jameis's value go up from $1 million? So if Brees was retiring, they were setting themselves up to have this secret and to know what Jameis could do. And now he's going to be out in the open and everyone's going to see. So, they kind of lose that a little bit with this too. But I'm curious to know. And I think it's a good test for him. I think there's a lot of pressure on him. This is his chance to show that the 30 interception season isn't who he is. It's his chance to show that he deserves to be a starter again. And if he wants to stay here, it's his chance to show that he should be the quarterback when Brees retires. So I'm excited to see what he does. But, I really don't know what to expect because I don't know how he's fixed his mental processing yet.
NewOrleans.football. That's the site. Go subscribe now. Get over there and keep up with Nick Underhill as he covers the Saints as good as anybody. Check out the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure and subscribe. That way when the new one gets published, that you will have the alert sent to your device. Nick, thank you as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Nick Underhill checking in on his regular Tuesday segment. We'll be back and close that hour 2.
Off the bench with Kalana and T-Bob.